earlier video, I designed and built a rear crossmember bash bar hitch receiver to go under the roll pan on the D100 project. Now when I designed that, I didn't have the roll pan yet. Well, since building that, I have received my roll pan and found that my design had a couple of flaws. Well, one flaw really that caused a couple of issues. So, the first being that the roll pan has an integrated cutout for the license plate, which is recessed a little bit. Well, my crossmember didn't sit back far enough to allow the roll pan to sit all the way where it needed to. It pushed it out about 1/8 of an inch, and that caused the roll pan just to not go all the way where it needed to. That also caused the hitch receiver, or caused not enough clearance for the hitch receiver. In other words, the hitch receiver would have stuck out a little bit, even though it's behind the license plate. It would have stuck out too far, not enough clearance. So I had to redesign and rebuild the crossmember. And here's what I came up with. Now, if you watched the previous video, the original crossmember I built actually had the frame mounts on the outside of the frame. They kind of came up and bent over and hooked onto the top of the frame. Well, what that did was push that 2x3 piece there out to the edge of the frame, so it stuck out 2 inches beyond the end of the frame. And that's what was causing the clearance issues. So for this one, what I did was I took some of this 4x4 tube here. This is actually quarter wall 4x4 tubing. I cut off, I believe it was about 5 inches of that, so it's about 5 inches high, and then I cut it in half on the diagonal. So I split it along the two opposing corners, and that gave me these corner pieces here. What this is, so it's 4 inches out and it goes 4 inches back in the frame, and with it being quarter wall, now I was able to drill it through the side for the frame mounts, but I also tapped the holes, and that kept me from having to try to get a nut on the inside. That was a pain in the ass with the previous version. This one, I just drilled and tapped the quarter wall plate basically on the two sides. So what that does now, it gave me the option or the ability to take that 2x3 crossmember, which is 3/16 wall, and it actually sits on the frame rail behind this 1/4 inch plate. So now the bumper not only is supported by the frame like it was before, where the weight is on the frame and not relying on any welds or relying on the bolts or anything, but when there's a trailer connected to it, the force of pulling the trailer is now going to be against 1/4 inch plate that is basically just bent. There's no weld. That's just a bend in the plate. So the 2x3 crossmember is welded across the top, across the front, bottom, and on the back side. That thing is completely welded. Even though it is 1/4 inch plate and 3/16 wall tubing, I did do multiple passes with my welder, since I only have a little Lincoln 110 welder. So I did do multiple passes on that. And then now that crossmember sits behind the roll pan. There's about 1 inch of clearance between the crossmember and the license plate location on the roll pan. So now that that's built, I had to figure out the next problem. So here's the next problem I had to figure out. This is a scrap piece of 2x3, so let's just imagine that's the crossmember. This is the hitch receiver that I got that I'm going to use. So I'm going to cut it down to length. Now, and I want it to go obviously all the way through the 2x3 tubing so that I can weld it across here, around this side and around the back side, and weld that fully in place. But the issue that I'm running into, the issue that I'm running into and that I've kind of got figured out, and I think this is how I'm going to do it, is the receiver pin. So in order to get to the pin, normally you would have something like this. But I don't have enough clearance available behind the roll pan and the front of the hitch receiver to have my bumper, or to have the cross member back far enough to be able to access the hitch pin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to center the hitch pin in the center of my bumper or bash bar or cross member or whatever. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill out part of the bottom on either side, and that'll allow me to get up in there to install the pin. So basically it's going to be something like that. I don't know how well you can really see that, but it's going to be basically something like that. And then that will still allow me to be able to slide my hitch receiver in, or the hitch tube into the receiver, pin it, and then I'll just have to trim the back end of the tube going in. Let me find that. Hang on. And now, when this goes in and lines up, I'll have to trim off part of the back just because I don't have the clearance behind my cross member because of the gas tank and the existing cross member that's there holding the Ram Charger gas tank that I installed. So it just means I'll have to trim this down a bit, and then I'll be able to use it. So that's my next step now, is to cut this down to length. I'm going to remove the cross member from the truck, and then I'm going to get to play with a tool that I keep forgetting that I have, and I think it's going to make cutting out a square portion, both sides of the cross member, relatively easy. Hopefully. We'll see. Haven't done it yet. So, this is the tool I'm going to be using. This is a Hugin, it's a mag drill. For those of you that don't know, a mag drill uses an electromagnetic base to hold the drill to the workpiece. So, right now, you can see I have the base turned on. And what that does is that securely mounts the drill to the metal that I'm drilling. So what I'm going to do is, if this is the cross member, I'm going to cut out the square for the hitch receiver. So I'm going to cut out the four corners using the mag drill, and then I'm going to take a cutoff wheel and basically connect the dots to get the square cut out. I'll be doing that both front and back. So first thing I'm going to do is just drill a small hole here, and then I'll use that hole to locate the holes on the other side, and then I'll get all of them drilled out. And there you can see that makes some pretty quick work of that 3/16 wall tubing. It makes some really clean holes. Now what I'm going to do is just basically take my cutoff wheel and cut out the remainder of the center section. All right, so there you can see, got the receiver or the cross member cut out for the receiver. Now I'm going to line the back end up even with the back of the cross member, tack it in place, and then weld it out. Alright, so once I got the hitch receiver fully welded out, I gave everything a quick coat of some Rust-Oleum flat black, got it all bolted into the truck, and then I went ahead and I even wired in the pigtail for the trailer wiring, and I got the license plate light wired in for the roll pan. Now that all that is done, the next step is to get the roll pan installed. Now the roll pan that I got from